Comms Group, we've got this series of panel discussions that we intend to launch over the next few months. What we plan to do is we plan to pick up sector-specific focus, get in eminent panelists from the industry, from academia, and from the policy and the government stakeholders. So we've got a stellar group of folks who've come in today. We've got Surajit Roy, we've got Mr. Pasu Sharma, and we've got Mr. Girish Kulkarni representing NSDC and NASSCOM today. I've got my manager, Mr. Pramod Pachisia, who will be steering and moderating the session today. The objective of this 1 hour discussion that will be followed by half an hour Q&A, in case the audience has questions, is to understand the benefits of apprenticeship for the IT and ITS industry. We've seen substantial change in terms of how this industry specifically has kind of evolved and transformed over the past year and a half. In many cases, in many geographies, we've seen that the COVID has not really impacted. In fact, it's accelerated the growth of the BPM industry. Not just in India but across the globe. And at the same time, also, many of these organizations have kind of shown interest in terms of plugging in the popular NAP scheme that we have been promoting. So the objective is to understand that in greater detail, get in the expert voices, learn from their experiences, and obviously see how this can kind of fit in your context. And the second is obviously to open the forum at the end of the session where we will have your queries, your inputs, thoughts in terms of how this can move forward. I would now invite Pramod Boss to come in, maybe start off with the first set of observations that he's seen. Obviously, he's been steering the IT and ITS teams within 2Comms for the past 2 decades and more. So he comes with some sort of contextual intelligence as well that will be really helpful, and then maybe we can move around with the panelists and obviously ask them questions as we move forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Karan. I'd like to take the chance to come back and thank Vasu, Girish sir, and Surajit sir to be able to find time for this session. Our intention is to go very, very focused on industry-wise, because we felt that in each industry has its own needs and asks. So we thought we'll come back into a closer group and get the ITS industry invited today. So largely, we are expecting most of our panelists to be the ITS industry today. By and large, the ITS industry, and if I can say the IT industry, also to a great extent or mostly rely on a large workforce. It's a workforce dependent pool of people. I think that's one of the largest job market creators in the country at this point of time. And most of it actually comes at a bottom of the pyramid in terms of fresher. And that's the largest pool that both these industries sort of continue to invite. Both these industries have been, well ahead of its times when it comes to have been running their own apprentices or internship programs as good as that across the country. And I think that is something that both the industries have had to do, because the infrastructure available to them wasn't there at that point of time in their duration. I'm sorry, I have to just take this up. Yeah, sorry. So both these industries have had to come back and build an infrastructure of their own to sort of come back and take care of the gap that was always existing in the industry from an education standpoint. I think the academia tried to bridge it, but at the end of the day, the need of theirs was so much different from what the academia could offer. So they had to sort of come back and do that. And while both these industries have a very fairly large focus on their in-house training, which is the bridge programs or the programs which are sort of going to help the fresher pool to come in, I think there is the Apprentice Act and the NAP scheme comes as a boon to the industry to be able to help them, not only get their talent pool and the hiring pipeline right, look at their compensation and benefits, look at their ability to come back and work with creating a pipeline for future leadership. So I think that is where the boon and the opportunity and the benefits for the industry are. Specifically the focus today is largely the BPM industry. We're also looking at the technology industry, which is also on the infrastructure side very heavy, dependent on entry-level workforce. Both these industries is what our focus area has been today. With that, I think I will jump to understand And so the context, so how we will take this discussion is to try and get the audience understand what the Apprentice Act is, get them a industry view on what is happening in the industry, the role of NASSCOM, and how the industry is taking it, how the ones who have already moved in, the early advantage people who have taken in, how they have done it. Then we'll come to understanding what is the future of Apprentice Act in India, and then we'll move to Q&A session. So that's going to be the flow of discussion for us to take from here. My first question is to set the context right, Vasu sir, if you can tell us more about the Apprentice Act in India, the the reason why it was there, and what is the NAP scheme, why was it needed, and set the ball rolling for all of us to understand from there.
Thank you, Pramod, for that. I think most of us are aware of the Apprenticeship Act, so I won't go too much into the theoretical side of what the act is, what is apprenticeship, training, and what it leads to. I'll only talk about some of the salient factors, but I think I'll want to start with sharing some data with you, specifically for optional trades that something that NSDC handles, and in fact 2COMS is also actively pushing. The optional trade courses under apprenticeship that fall specifically under the IT/ITES. We have a good variety of courses that we have. And interestingly, even though the overall trend, what we saw in the last financial year, which is 2020, we saw almost a 100% increase growth in the apprenticeship course that we had done. And we were quite surprised and in fact overwhelmed because there was almost one quarter which was in complete lockdown, and then you also had companies opening up in phases. But specifically for the IT/ITES sector, in 1920 we had close to about 5,500 contracts, apprentices that companies had taken. And in the last financial year, this grew to 14,000. So almost 3x of growth we saw. The establishments, the companies that were taking apprentices doubled. So we had close to 450 companies taking apprentices, and close to 800 companies taking apprentices last year. This is interesting because, but at the same time, it's not a surprise. Because I feel that IT/ITES sector, not only in our skilling ecosystem, but in the Indian context, is a huge sector. It has huge potential. And I think what has dominated this year, apart from life sciences and healthcare sector, is the IT/ITES sector, because everything has moved online. Everything, to business, for business to go on as usual. There's a serious digital transformation that any sized company in any sector has had to undertake. So that's a huge potential we're talking about now for a sector such as IT/ITES that's contributing to 8% of the GDP, growing at 2-3% per annum. There's a huge potential for jobs in the sector. The sector employs around 4 million people, out of which about 15%, 10 to 15%, about 500,000 people are contractual workers. So essentially what happened, and this specifically happened last year also because of reverse migration, because of, a lot of companies not knowing, they had to shut down because of lockdown, then they had to open up. So there was a reliance, and it's expected that the reliance on contractual workers is to increase. Now, what does that say? I think the IT/ITES sector is a very evolving sector because the technology is changing at a rapid pace, and because of that, it's needless to say that this calls for a need for upskilling or reskilling or skilling specific to the requirements of the kind of technology that you're dealing with. Now, this is exactly where apprenticeship as a mode of training for companies comes along. Now, when we were really scratching our heads and wondering how could we get over 100% growth in companies taking apprentices in a year which was hit by pandemic. That doesn't, that not only means that companies were, a lot of people were losing their jobs, but at the same time, bottom line of every company was being affected and impacted in some way or the other. And we realized that companies actually started to understand the value proposition that they get from taking apprentices. Now, apprentices is something that actually every company is doing. Any person you take, any BPO, voice telecaller you take, any person you're taking in across, maybe handling your CRM, so on and so forth. Whoever you're taking, you are spending considerable time with that person to get them up to speed with what is required of their job role, what is the kind of skill set they need. If they have to interact with somebody on phone, what is the cultural things that they need to be aware of, how they need to speak, what is the protocol they need to follow. And this is exactly what apprenticeship does. So every company engages in some point of training and some kind of capacity building for their new employees, but it's not structured, it's not formal. So that's what apprenticeship aims at doing. It aims at preparing you, giving you hands-on learning, giving you mentorship under somebody, and giving you the right skill set for you to become equipped to handle that job. And I feel that unfortunately, apprenticeship as a training program is not very widely known. It's a two-way thing. I think companies have been reluctant in understanding the program and taking apprentices, and at the same time, I think the government has really failed to communicate the value proposition that an apprenticeship program gets. So it's a two-way thing, but I think companies should understand that there is shop floor training that every person needs, no matter what academic academic background that they've come from, what experience that they have. They still need hands-on training, on the shop floor training, on the job training, to really get become an expert in their kind of job. And that apprenticeship brings about in a very structured way. So you have curriculums, so for instance, this year I believe that there are a lot of people here who are in the BPO, attendees are in the BPO sector. So we have this course called BPO Executive Voice. Close to 15% of the apprentices that were taken in the last financial year, which is 2021, were in the BPO Executive Voice category. Some of the other, high demand job roles are data entry operator, domestic voice, associate CRM voice. So these are some of the entry level job roles in the ITS sector. We have a lot more, and I'm sure Girish would be touching upon, what NASSCOM does and what is their role in the apprenticeship program. But what we're basically trying to say is that apprenticeship should be an integral part of your HR policy, of your L&D hiring policy. You should, take. So I mean, if you do a, apple to apple comparison, cost comparison of any fresh employee that you take as a full-time employee versus taking that person as an apprentice, making them go through the entire apprenticeship training, and then taking them as a full-time employee, you will see that there are benefits on both the sides. That person goes through a formalized training, which is as per industry standards, as per a curriculum that NASSCOM has made for that particular job role. And for you, you start off with a smaller financial commitment towards that person, because that person is technically is undergoing training, so you don't have to pay them the salary that you would have to pay a full-time employee. So you pay them a stipend, and once they've proved their worth, they've undergone the training on your shop floor, you are free to give them full-time employment, so on and so forth. And besides this saving that you already have, which is almost 40-50% that you'll see if you do your analysis. Any HR person can, do the, cost to company CTC for a full-time employee versus an apprentice. It's a very simple calculation. You'll see that there are cost savings already. On top of that, the government of India is providing a financial incentive scheme called National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme, NAPS, where the government contributes, shares the stipend burden with you. So whatever stipend you have to pay, government will reimburse up to 1,500 rupees for that. And if the person has to go through basic training, which is a classroom theoretical training before, it's like a precursor to the on-the-job training, especially for freshers, people who are absolutely not exposed to or haven't gone through any kind of skilling in their particular job role, then government also shares the cost of basic training that you might have to do. So these are some of the benefits of apprenticeship and doing. There is tremendous amount of digital transformation happening. People are moving online. A lot of companies are investing in increasing their reliance on digital platforms, and that's why a lot of new skills would be required, and hence companies who've been early adopters of the apprenticeship program will understand that the most effective way to train your people for newer skills would be a structured apprenticeship program that you can run in your organization. And yeah, that's about it. Amongst other things, I feel that this year most of the growth has come from the BFSI, insurance, life sciences, healthcare. A lot of retail has obviously moved from physical retail to online retail. So we are seeing a lot of growth, and I'm sure the IT/ITES companies are also looking at most of them are on the growth path, looking at hiring more people. Maybe the reliance on contractual worker has increased, and that's where the role of 2Coms will come in, and they'll be able to guide you more on how you can effectively manage your hiring. And with that said, I'll just leave with one advice that do try it out. For some of you who've tried, I'm sure you've experienced the fruit and the gains that come with the apprenticeship program. But for the ones who haven't, do get in touch with 2Coms. They are one of our leading third-party aggregators. They are working with some of the leading companies across sectors, and they would be able to effectively get you on board, get your apprenticeship program started, and soon enough you will see that it's the most effective training program that is there in our country, and how it will also impact you in your balance sheet. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vasu, and thanks for acknowledging our work in the industry. It's nice to hear it when it comes from industry leaders like you. We try and do our bit to come back and I almost feel that apprentices is the way to do nation building. I think it is a nation building exercise because you are creating talent for future, and I think that's our bit to also do the same. Over the years of my recruitment journey, I've continued to feel the bridge, the gap in the, we would probably end up having to show clients or customers, maybe about 100 people, and end up seeing maybe 2 or 3% convert actually for the final jobs. I think that's a huge gap. And the only reason why that continues to exist, and mind you, most of the people that we would show would be people who are educated coming from very good colleges, but the gap continues to exist. And I think the apprentice is the only way forward for the same. So with that, I think my question would be to... Sorry, Vasu.
Yeah, one point I also wanted to add, which I did. Apprenticeship not only creates a talent pipeline within a company, but it actually increases the access to talented pool within the entire sector. So even if you're not able to employ apprentices that you've trained within your company, at least they would be available for other companies in your value chain or your competitors. And if the overall productivity of a sector increases, the contribution to GDP increases, and it leads to growth and nation building, as you said. So yeah, just one point I wanted to add on that. Yeah.
Very nice. And I think one good way and a long-term shot is to the overall poaching between each other organizations will also sort of decrease only when we actually have available pools. So I think it's the long-term solution to cost increase for the compensation and benefits overall. I think that's where it is. With that, I'd like to move my questions to get more view on the industry. Girish, you come from NASSCOM with your experience there. Would you tell us what is the role of NASSCOM? How are you seeing the industry looking at it? The IT and ITS industry always has a different paradigm way of looking at workforce, because the workforce is the workforce is not really the workforce, but is the source of revenue for them. So the questions that you see the industry has, or your perspective on the industry, I think it'll be nice to get your understanding on the same.
Thanks, Pramod. Thank you very much. And good afternoon to all of you. I am assuming there are some ladies also on our invitee list. So good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're all keeping fine and safe in this COVID atmosphere. It is all the more important to be safe. And then Jaan hai to jahaan hai. So let's be all safe. And I'm also equally delighted to have both Surjit sir and Vasu, who are kind of, my gurus in apprenticeship. When I started with NASSCOM, taking up the responsibility of apprenticeship 3 years ago, they were the ones who really taught me as to what apprenticeship is all about. And, and hence, it was a pleasant surprise to me to see both of them here on the panel today. So thank you very much for that. That was a pleasant surprise after seeing my friends and colleagues after a long time. And now coming back to your question, Pramod, as to what industry needs are regarding apprenticeship, I will touch upon these 2-3 things. What are the apprehensions the industry has about apprenticeship? What are how the whole apprenticeship scheme can be modeled to suit the industry requirements without compromising anything on the business imperatives and their regular current processes. On top of it, what is the benefit that the government is offering to whichever company who want to adopt apprenticeship, and what are the, so on and so forth. These are the kind of things I think probably would be on everybody's mind. And it is good that, particularly apprenticeship, since it caters to the entry-level workforce, and the turnover, I won't call it attrition, but I would call it turnover, is quite high, particularly in BPO, BPM industries. And more so when, and that the entry-level workforce is the one which is actually earning the bread and butter for the company. As we go up, the hierarchical structure goes very steep in a pyramid way, right? So the base is at the bottom, right? And that is what is earning benefits for the organization also. And that is where is the opportunity for the organizations also to earn and optimize and, to add up to more to their bottom line. Before I start, I would like to say that, from apprenticeship, from the legal perspective, any organization which is having more than 30 people, I think this is to the benefit of some of the new companies who are just probably would be implementing apprenticeship, just bear with me for that. Any organization which is more than 30 people as their headcount, both direct and indirect put together, are legally bound to engage apprentices to the tune of 2.5% of their headcount minimum. And that should be the number of apprentices to be engaged in an organization in a financial year at any given point of time. So, and this percentage, 2.5%, can go up to 15% as per the latest amendment that happened in 2019, the latest amendment that came in. So, and also earlier it was only, since apprenticeship was only for graduate engineers or engineering sectors and things like that, manufacturing and all. But now with the advent of NAP scheme, it is all the more, applicable and usable by other sectors also, like services industries, BPO, BPM, product, software industries and so on. It's all applicable to them. And the amendments over a period of time that have happened in the law, it has made it very, very flexible to engage apprentices in terms of the duration, in terms of the curricula, in terms of hiring them, in terms of selection of the candidates and so on and so forth. Typically, when apprentices are hired, the one question what anybody has is, oh my God, will I be able to follow my regular process of hiring in terms of selecting the candidates, shortlisting and all? Yes, absolutely yes. There need not be any change in your regular process of identifying the candidates. Only once at the moment when you are ready to hand them out an offer letter, you can bring them onto this portal. I think 2Coms definitely can play a supportive role there if you engage them as a TPA, definitely. And the end-to-end, they can take out the entire process. And any organization which is having even minimum of 3 people as their headcount can also engage apprentices. That is another law, right? And for companies who are actually kind of wanting to spend their CSR funds, right, as to whether how that CSR funds can be used, is that any number of apprentices you are engaging above 2.5%, the expense of engaging those apprentices, additional apprentices above 2.5%, can be expensed out of your CSR funds. That means you've got an opportunity here to save, use your own CSR funds to create future workforce for your own organization, right? And as the law says that your obligation to the nation as part of our apprenticeship is to engage and train apprentices. There is no obligation that you need to hire even a single apprentice after successful completion of the apprenticeship training. Law doesn't mandate that. But however, from the business perspective, it is all the more important that why would you waste your energy, source, time, money, and everything, right, in training somebody who in future, at least some of them, portion of them is not useful for your business. So from that perspective, you select the candidates who would be useful for your business, train them, and you've got a good window of minimum 6 months to assess whether they are performing well, they are not performing well. So it is in your business interest that only the good performing people out of this lot, you can select them. If there are opportunities in your organization, you can select them for permanent employment. If not, you can let them go. As earlier panelists was saying that, it would be a service that you would be doing for the other industries to pick such trained candidates. Maybe there are some people, small companies who are not having this ability to train and such people. If they are trained on these processes, probably they are ready material to hire them. So that is a service that you would be doing to the organization. So, and there are stipulations of, at the latest amendment, there are some stipulations in terms of the stipend that need to be paid and so on and so forth. For graduate apprentices, it is about 9,000 rupees per month, that stipend that need to be paid. And for diplomas, it is 7,000 and so on. It goes on decreasing right up to 5,000 rupees. And in all these cases, Government of India, as part of NAP scheme, is reimbursing stipend to the tune of 1,500 rupees per candidate per month, which is reimbursed on a quarterly basis. And I must say, another improvement and benefit, the moment when we say apprenticeship is that, generally, because probably earlier how it was implemented and all that stuff, because of the legacy and history and all, the moment we say apprenticeship, government scheme, people, shy away from that. Oh, I don't know how much it will become cumbersome, lot of paperwork, I need to file this report, returns, and so on and so forth. Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, since last 2.5 years or 3 years, wherein we have been implementing, I must really congratulate Surjit sir there for implementing and establishing such a wonderful, I would say, really wonderful online portal that we have not seen any document to be submitted, physical document to be submitted to any government office. No running around, absolutely no running around. In fact, the reimbursements are also happening online as we speak. Every day we are approving reimbursements, and that goes to NSDC, they are approving, and straight away the reimbursement money is coming into the company's bank accounts. So I'm coming here is that absolutely there is no hassle. And the government actually, the whole of this MSDC was created and NSDC was created. The trust that the Government of India has put on the industry to be self-surveillant in terms of complying with the law, that is enormous. And that is the reason up till now from NSDC's side, so far, I haven't seen any show cause notice being served to any of the industry for non-compliance. It is the trust that the government is putting on the industry, and hence it becomes all the more additional responsibility from the industry to comply with the law. At the same time, I am seeing, since ages, the NAT scheme was already there. All the big companies, even in IT industry, ITS industry, any big companies, all of them have been complying with the law and engaging all their fresher hiring which they are doing as apprentices under NATS. And fortunately for them, they were all engineers. All these people were being engaged as apprentices for 1 year, because 1 year apprenticeship was a mandatory thing under NATS. And that is the flexibility what NAPS has brought us here, that it can be even 6 months. And if basic training is exempted. Even with 3 months of on-the-job training for graduates, you can be compliant with the law. I think this is what my guru, Mr. Sujit sir, has kind of popularized with everybody. So, the whole of implementation of this scheme has been made so flexible, so industry friendly, and so easy to implement without compromising anything on your business imperatives, either in terms of selection of candidates, criteria of selection, qualifications, numbers, nothing. I mean, everything goes as it is, the way you were doing earlier. Only thing is that has to be brought under this framework of apprenticeship. It is just a formality. And that is how most of the industries, particularly at the entry level, where hiring is also very huge, and I would say turnover also is very huge in BPO, BPM industries. This is becoming a best solution for maintaining their bottom line profits. And that is how, the alignment of the scheme, the law, and the business is what is happening very, very smoothly. And I must say, without naming a company, I can say honestly that one company in the last financial year have earned to the tune of added close to about 7 crores to their bottom line straight away by way of using apprenticeship in IT/ITES industry. So that is huge. So what is NASSCOM's role? NASSCOM has already got about 18 curricula which are suitable for apprenticeship. And out of them, as Vasu was saying earlier, about 7-8 of them are very, very suitable curricula for BPO, BPM industry, like CRM voice, CRM non-voice, BPO executive, and data entry operator, and so on and so forth. So they are all there, but also the scheme provides you to customize your own curricula, and the duration, of course, it may take a little bit of time to get approvals and all, but you have the flexibility to design your own curricula as well. And NASSCOM's role is to support the industry to get this curricula, formed and approved, and get it uploaded in NSDC's portal and so on and so forth. That is the role what NASSCOM plays. Predominantly, our responsibility in NASSCOM is to, by way of identifying the industry's requirements in terms of which areas the apprentices are needed and which skills are important to be the apprentices to be trained on, and based on that, formulating and establishing the curriculum, getting them approved, and offering that to industry to use for apprentices is one of the primary roles of NASSCOM. And secondly, evangelizing the scheme of apprenticeship, and as I was saying, making the two ends meet, the business end and the scheme and the government compliance end, making these two meet without hampering anything on either sides is what the role NASSCOM has been playing. And that is where, we have seen great success that, more than 800 companies have been already onboarded, more than 15,000 apprentices are there this year itself. So are there onboarded only under MAP scheme. So it is very, very useful. I can name some companies also like eClerks, WNS, Genpact, Tech Mahindra, all these, big BPO, BPM companies are definitely, they have already onboarded and they're reaping the benefits of it. So my suggestion would be that if you have any question on implementing apprenticeship, you can ask NASSCOM. We will be there to support you right from, and for all the transactional support also in terms of registering the organization in the portal, in terms of registering the candidate in the portal, bulk uploading, reimbursements, and contract signing between the candidate and the companies, and so on and so forth. We will be definitely helping you out. But at the same time, I would advise to go through 2Com's route. They are the professionals there, and they do know the entire process both in and out. And they also, of course, there are many cases wherein both the 2Coms and the NASSCOM is working together to support some of the bigger companies to implement apprenticeship and all that. So it is working very, very smooth. And in such cases, the number of apprentices are in hundreds or even thousands. Those are the situations what we have. So from that perspective, I would say, just to close, this is a very, very useful scheme to prepare the future workforce of your organization at the lowest cost that is possible as far as investment is concerned. just, and this will in the long run, this will yield very less of attrition. That has been our experience as well. Because there have been companies wherein people have grown to senior levels, and starting at the apprentice thing. That is how this whole company and loyalty with the companies and all that is established by way of apprenticeship. So because, catch them young, train them into your mold and put them onto the job. That's the whole essence of apprenticeship, right? So hence, I would say nowadays, and this is the best business proposition typically for BPO, BPM companies, wherein at the bottom of the pyramid is the highest, bigger the number of, the workforce, and that is where the attrition also is there. And to backfill this attrition, this apprenticeship comes in very, very handy and adds the bottom line. And I can guarantee you, if you really implement it to the hilt, you will not be disappointed. It will definitely add value to your business. And any support in this regard, if you need, you definitely can reach out to us, and also to 2Comms if you need. We'll be there to support you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Girish sir. Very good insight. I'm very glad to hear that an organization was able to add 7 crores to its bottom line. It is remarkable. I think for that particular organization, or any particular organization of whatever size it may be, 7 crores added to bottom line is substantial. It is substantial. So absolutely, that is the power of apprentice. It not only helped the organization build its workforce for future, but also became a profit center, and the profitability rose. I think that's wonderful. That's the beauty of the scheme, and I think that's why you usually intend to use the word nation building. Yes, Girish sir, please come in.
That exactly is the point. You gave me the right word there. The HR all the time is a cost center in any organization. And I come from the industry since last 35 years, 36 years of experience before getting into NASSCOM. HR is always a support function, a cost center. And here is an opportunity to at least, meet your hiring cost. If the size of the company goes bigger and bigger, then HR may not be becoming a cost center, profit center only based on these schemes. Of course, there are innovative things wherein I know of many companies wherein HR function also has become a profit center. But here is an opportunity for you to become, at least to assuage some cost part of it, taking out these benefits from this. And also another benefit, I forgot, is that for apprentices, there is no need of paying ESI and EPF. So that is an additional advantage what straightway goes to the bottom line. Plus the incentive that is coming from the government. And also the salaries, as Vasu was saying earlier, salaries that you pay for stipend that you pay for apprentices, that is much, much lesser than the regular salaries, which otherwise you would have paid to the permanently hired employees. And I'm just summing it up. And you have an opportunity to assess and identify only the best performing candidates out of the lot, take only them into a regular employment, and let others, after completion, let others go into the open job market. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think the last point is very important, that it also sends off for every person who is a part of the trainee program and knows that he or she is hired as an apprentice, it becomes an aspiration for that individual to perform better. So not only that you as an organization have a choice, but it also leaves a sense of competition for every trainee to come back and work hard to get retained, because they know that it's a training program and it sort of, there is a, end date to the training program, and that automatically pushes and helps the entire ecosystem. I think wonderful. One point I would, I think you mentioned, and I must reassure that the portal that Girish sir spoke about, which Surajit sir, of course, led the way through making it happen. We've seen the kind of time that you took to sort of make it is actually very, very smooth and nice, is very comfortable for industry to use. While 2Comms does offer end-to-end services and program management involves portal management as well. But I think one point that we bring on table is to come back and help the organizations understand and also work through them during the hiring process. So it is an end-to-end service that we intend to offer, where we sort of come back and sign your, sign the document with you, get you onto the portal, work with you on the hiring parameters, understand your hiring needs, look and make sure that we get and set a pipeline or a chain of hiring process right for you, and then help you through the program management. That's the service that we want to offer. And Girish, thanks ton for acknowledging our work that we do. And yes, some of the assignments that we are doing with NASSCOM are fantastic, and I think industry leaders along with us on the same. So that helps us and gives us confidence to do more, and we look forward to working more on the same. Brings me to the session, which is for Surajit sir. Surajit sir, you have been a veteran in this industry, and Vasu and Girish have already acknowledged that we are almost your apprentices when it comes to the same, and I completely agree.
Yes.
I remember the first time I met you, I think was Park Hotel, when we were trying to do one of our first webinars, and early in the morning you were up and out for your walk, and you were still out on the field looking at how the stage is being set up for the apprentice. So I know the amount of passion that you bring on table for the same. Thank you for joining us, and I'd like you to tell us more about apprentices across the globe. You've done a lot of research on apprentices across globe, structure, country, and you bring a lot of knowledge on the same. There's also a lot of talk about RQPs getting aligned with the courses abroad, so that alignments can happen. There's a lot of work on that. So what's the future? Or I'm asking you too many questions, I know, but I think with you, I can give you the subject of answering these. Also help us understand what is the future of apprentice, and where do you see apprentices heading in India? I think these are subjects I'm sure you're passionate about. So over to you, sir.
Can you hear me clearly? Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Pramod, for giving us this opportunity to address industry. One thing I would like to say that way forward is now, I think the time has come, from what I hear from Vasu and Girish, is for the industry representatives to actually speak about their experiences before such an audience, instead of the advocates of the government or the sector scale councils or people like us. I think time has come that whoever has tasted the fruits of whatever we are talking as proof of concept, if they speak to the industry, I think that becomes more believable by the industry. So as a strategy, we should look at more and more industry talking to industry now. What I will do is I will quickly run through the context of apprenticeship, the choice the industry has before it, the challenges, then what is happening across the globe, and what is likely to happen in future as far as apprenticeship is concerned. So as far as the context is concerned, there is no doubt that apprenticeship perhaps is the best program which is going around in the education and entire skill ecosystem in India. The context could not have been more relevant, where you have a young nation, a lot of people who are educated, who are skilled, yet where the industry is hungry, looking for a skilled workforce. It finds the product of the education and skill ecosystem not ready for taking the shop floor, not ready for employment. So that's where this program apprenticeship comes in. What is the choice before the industry? Well, the choice before the industry is to take this program, understand this program as a training tool, train people, and then cherry pick the best among them to employ, or continue their way of employing people and then investing in their training, where the success failure ratio or the risk of getting wrong people in, because you hardly know them on an interview or two, on board. So that is really the choice which the industry needs to assess, because hiring is any case will happen. It depends on whether you want to train and hire or hire and train. In spite of everything going well, what are the challenges? Why is it not taking off? Now here, I think challenges are none but advocacy. It's the government's program where government itself has ensured that it's the best kept secret from the industry. This is the apprenticeship program, by not projecting it, promoting it, talking about it sufficiently. And I'm saying it's the best kept secret, and I'm not referring it to as a law, because actually the law is so friendly that it's almost a wish list of the industry, which has been fructified, But as we see from in anything, whether it's a football player to a cricketer to a very good song in a very poor film, what is good always pushes its way through. So what is happening in the apprenticeship world is actually the strength of the program itself is gradually pushing its way through onto the larger ecosystem, and that's where you're seeing the rollouts. So once the government steps in and understands where a little more of promotion is required, little more of awareness is required, I'm sure apprenticeship is going to be the way forward for the Indian industry to recruit people, and it is going to be the way forward for the education system to educate and skill its students. See what is happening abroad, and we can take the model of Germany. It is a dual education system. So basically, a student who's in college or high school spends as much as 70% of his learning time on the shop floor of the industry and learns his skilling or education on an apprenticeship mode. 30% of the time is spent in the classrooms. 2/3 of the apprentices who are trained in a particular company are actually absorbed by the company itself. The rest of them, as Vasu mentioned, are absorbed by the sector, but they are all students or youngsters who are ready to take on employment, who have got the shop floor exposure, and so they are rounded off people who are ready for employment. Another interesting thing is rate of employment for apprentices in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, where apprenticeship is very strong, is more. Rate of unemployment is less when compared to graduates, pure graduates who have not been exposed to the apprenticeship world, who have not taken to the dual education system and have followed or passed out of a pure academic system. So this is what is happening. And as far as cost is concerned, while the governments are paying for the higher education part, it is the industry which is bearing the cost of training and on-the-job training and paying the stipend for the apprenticeship portion. Because they are bearing the cost of training and teaching on the shop floor, therefore, it is understood that wages which are being paid to learn an apprentice in terms of stipend would be less than the wages they pay to an employee as such. So this is going to come into India now as we see the new education policy, which talks about apprenticeship embedded degree programs, which is nothing but a dual education system coming in. But the more the industry understands it, the more the colleges understand it, and this is going to be the next challenge for the government, that they need to understand, the colleges need to understand that the industry understands requirements of what skill force is required more than the college itself. There is a lot of requirements or need for on-the-job training exposure of a student. So they need to open up. They need to surrender and do away with the resistance of hanging on to a conventional education system and trying to be feeling a sense of obligation that they are allowing students 30% of the time to go on the shop floor of an industry, or they are allowing industry to take part in a education skill ecosystem. They should know that they will do better. Their return on investment will improve. Whichever college, whichever university understands the importance of apprenticeship and takes to it in a realistic way, they would be the ones where ultimately the students will be coming to, because at the end of everything is employability. If the student feels that employability is ensured this way, then definitely the education system, colleges, the universities who have got it right, we are going to take the lead. So the future of Indian apprenticeship systems is going to be through the apprenticeship embedded degree programs, but that's not all of it. In India, there is an entire segment of people who are not so privileged, who don't even go to a formal high school or college education system. So they are dropouts. For them, what is happening in India today where there is no apprenticeship embedded degree programs? So apprentices are actually pass outs or dropouts from colleges, dropouts from schools, who are taken by the industry based on the qualifications which the industry requires for that category of potential workers. They are taken on, they are trained on the shop floor as apprentices, and the best of them are employed. So the dropouts, that ecosystem will continue in India despite the fact that a apprenticeship embedded degree program is going to take off hopefully very soon. So these are just some of the things that I wanted to share with you as trends, challenges, what is happening abroad and what is likely to happen in India. And the major challenge I see now ahead, apart from what was the challenge we were facing, which is regarding awareness, the major challenge I see now is the college and the education system coming and understanding the need for having the skill ecosystem integrated and apprenticeship integrated in a very, very good way, constructive way, along with the industry and taking this whole thing forward. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ethan, Surajit sir. I think very nice view of what you've mentioned, the dual education system, the degrees embedding in the apprentice program and the way forward. There's a huge role that academia along with the industry will have to play to achieve this. I think while we've got the qualification framework there, I'm just trying to understand, to get this really going, what do you think are the 2-3 action points that come to your mind that industry, academia, and people like us can sort of do to be able to achieve that goal? Because it's easier said than done for sure, and you know it well.
Yeah, here I would request NSDC and the sector skill councils and the third-party aggregators as a body to put this awareness or sensitivity in the regulator, which is the NCVET or the Ministry of Education, that they need to keep this system open. They should not make this system prescriptive, because nobody knows what is the requirement of industry in India. What is it that will work? It is not the same thing as aping a system, which you talked about, a QP. I think the best way to do it is keep it as indigenous as possible, addressing the requirements of the Indian industry and allowing the system to develop its own module, own paradigm, own processes. Because if we try and say that we know more than what we don't know, we are going to land up in another regulatory framework which will not work. And we know in India how long it takes for a regulatory framework to be modified. So we need to keep the pressure on the NCVT, on the ministry, both of the skill development and education, and on ourselves, to ensure that we remain open to whatever the industry is saying, open to what skill university is talking about, open to what is the requirement of an apprentice, open to what the sector skill council is saying based on experiences, and let roll in the way it develops. Perfection, we need not get into. There is nothing called perfection. Everything evolves for better, better, and better. So we should not make good the enemy of what excellence, to an enemy of good, or whatever you call it. We should have to roll out and evolve as an way when things develop. Keep learning, keep experimenting, keep improving. And that's how we develop a portal. I mean, we just started, and I'm happy to see that it's come up well. A lot of hard work to be in. Keep putting hard work into it. Keep talking to the industry. keep making the industry talk to the colleges. And that's where the role of sector skill councils and NSDC comes in, TPS come in, bring all of them together as one ecosystem. That's what happens in Germany. That's what happens in Austria. That's what happens in Switzerland. That together, the student, the colleges, the establishments, and the government, they together work, and the industry association, they together work out this program. It is not in silos. It cannot work in silos.
Very, very true. I fully agree with that. It can't work in silos for sure. I think very nice perspective, Surajit sir. Thanks a ton for the same. You mentioned about industry and academia working together. So I have some questions which are, something which come to my mind, largely from the ITS industry, since today's discussion is largely on the ITS industry. I penned down certain thoughts of questions that normally come in, the HRs of the companies that I've interacted so far with. Any one of you could sort of choose to answer the same depending on what you feel. These are very generic questions. Most of us probably know the answer, but in the benefit of the industry, I thought I should ask the same. Our industry, ITS industry, work through various shifts and night shifts and rotating shifts. A lot of them have questions around, whether the people can work in shifts, night shifts, how would that happen? The questions are also revolving around the processes, because each of them have a different process. Can the pay scales or trainee pay scales differ according to one process to another? That is a continuous thought. They also have, compensation linked with the processes. Certain times process-based pay is there, so that for this particular process, you sort of can get an additional amount because it requires an additional amount of know-how, time, and experience. Probably, competency also differ. So these are 2-3 questions that came to my mind, which I thought I should open it to the floor for anyone to sort of answer.
Yeah, one thing I'll leave it to, I think, Girish to answer the night shift one, and to answer the additional, what happens if you pay additionally apprentice doing some extra work. I think that is built into the system we have developed in the portal. I only want to say one thing which I used to say earlier also. A good part of the apprenticeship program, and that is the test of it, what we say, that program is so industry friendly. The answer to any of your questions will invariably be a yes. And so the 2 questions you asked, Girish will say about the night shift. I think Vasu will answer for the additional compensation being paid to an apprentice if he is doing something special. Answer is yes. The detailing, I think they'll tell you.
That's perfect. I think that's wonderful. True. You're on mute, Girish.
As per the late night shift working, as per the latest amendment, it has already been, in the law itself, it has been amended and allowed. Only the caveat there is that the people, the person who's working should be above the age of 18 years. It should be an adult. So, and actually, many companies, BPO companies are using this facility. They are having apprentices working, different shifts. So, and also to add it to that, one more thing I want to clarify. Many people ask this question, Pramod, is that whether the effort that is being put by apprentices can be billed, whether it is billable. Let me give you an example there. If I'm digressing, please stop me there. But even historically, also when the apprenticeship was being implemented, even in a manufacturing industry, suppose somebody is working on a machining line and he's producing some shafts or some gears or something like that. So that is a cost to the company. Of course, that cannot be just wasted out or thrown out. If it is, actually apprenticeship says that apprentices have to be trained on the job, live job processes. So the output that is coming out of that cannot be wasted. It can be used for commercial purpose also. And from that perspective, the effort of these apprentices definitely can be billed. So no issues there. Second shift working, yes, it is allowed, provided the candidates are above the age of 18 years.
There was one more question on the payouts. Can they differ between processes? I think that was one more question. Yeah.
So I think just to build to what I think Surajit sir said and what Girish also said over here, I think let's not forget the fact that apprentices, even if you read the act, they talk about the normal apprentices working in the normal working hours of the company, apprentices doing the work. So treat them as full-time employees. I mean, the efficacy and the effectiveness of the training that they will get through an establishment will depend a lot on how much you are integrating them in all your processes. So yes, almost every question is going to have an answer of yes. And when it comes to stipend, why we have a prescribed minimum stipend is because as government, we want to ensure that apprentice across any level is getting a minimum amount of stipend. But we've seen this in establishments across sectors, across job roles where apprentices have been taken. A lot of establishments say that we are going to pay what is a fair amount to be paid. Sometimes it's the starting salary that a company will give, or sometimes it is taken into account what the cost of living in a particular city is. And so minimum is only is a recommendation that we give, but you are free to give them over and above the minimum stipend, and you must, if you think that the apprentice deserves more of the kind of work that they're doing, or if they're taking on additional responsibilities. Establishments, it's a fair practice to give them an equitable pay. So yeah.
Sure, thanks, Dan. I think please, Girish sir, please come in.
Yeah, actually, I think Sujit sir also must be wanting to say this, is that any additional payment above the stipend amount, in fact, in the portals itself, in the system itself, is allowed, and there is a column, that additional payment column is there. The whole principle is that, as stipulated by the Government Act, whatever minimum is prescribed, that need to be paid without any deductions. Once that is achieved, whatever extra amount you pay, it is your prerogative, the organization's prerogative to pay. I just, a practical example, situation I'll tell you. In a company, BPM company, I don't want to name the company, there they are hiring at freshers in bulk, thousands. And of course, through their selection process, they had identified some, in the beginning itself, some possible high performing candidates, and probably some people who needed a little bit, probably more time to reach to that level. But at the same time, not to have an HR problem within the organization, they wanted to pay the same amount to these guys also, and the high performing guys also, which they had anticipated. And we said, fine, that's perfectly all right. And also now coming to base, typically what happens is the exploitation should not happen. Like putting some additional high targets and making people run after it and then achieve it, and then that is not acceptable. But if some people, because as you very rightly said, for executing a particular process, some additional extra skills are needed, efforts are needed, things like that, that definitely can be additionally compensated by process to process. But again, ensuring that a minimum stipend is always paid as part of the contract, and also additional incentives you need to pay, that also need to be announced, declared beforehand, and that has to be shown in the portal also. So I think that process is very much there.
Thanks, Dan, sir. I think the best part about what I've taken away from this answer is that there is a yes to every question. And that's the best part about it. I think that's very good. That's very encouraging for the industry, I'm sure. Karan, you had some questions, and from the, I think, audience also, there are some questions. I think we can open there are some questions already written in the chat. Karan, would you help me just take
Yes, boss. Yeah, sure. So my question would maybe go to Vasu first, and then Surajit sir. And we've been obviously talking about the benefits of implementing a program like this, and we've spoken about productivity levels, increased skill levels of entry-level workforce, and obviously the biggest hook that companies, especially MSMEs, that they look for is the financial benefits. So my question maybe would go to Vasu first. I think that there are questions where people want to know what is the reimbursement cycle like. How does that look at for a layperson? Maybe if somebody's starting the scheme of say in the next month. So how does that kind of flow? And the second is, has there been any sort of impact with respect to public spending because of COVID, and how has that kind of affected the whole, view of the government towards the scheme? So that's a question where maybe your views would be very important for the members on the group.
Karan, so just one clarification. The first one is on the lead time for reimbursement.
Yes. Maybe the reimbursement cycle. How is that built in, and how does the company get it?
Right. So right now we do not have a defined time as far as how much is the minimum time we'll take to verify, process the payment. But one thing I can assure is that since we've started the reimbursement process, we have been shortening the lead time. In fact, almost on a weekly basis, we are discussing strategies on how we can reduce the time between when the establishment submits and we can go. One thing that I can tell you is, Imran, what we're striving to do is that, and we will very soon announce it also, that we want to move to a lead time of 1 month maximum. So if establishment submits a claim, it will go through certain checks. We will ask for certain proof of payment for a small sample of candidate apprentices that you have, and then we'll process the payment. Having said that, Girish touched upon a very powerful service we provide, which is an online reimbursed salary stipend payment to apprentices through an online payment gateway. Now, what that does is that reduces our due diligence that we need to do to has paid the stipend to the apprentices. So that will obviously shorten the lead. So for any company who's submitting the claims in a right order, ensuring that the documents and the declaration that we ask for is in place, should ideally get their reimbursement in about a month and a half. Is the time period that should be fine. A lot of times companies make mistakes. We have to go back. There's a lot of to and fro that happens. So if a company can avoid that, then they can expect it in about 1.5 months. I think the second question was about the budget. I think right from the top, from the ministry, from the finance ministry to the Ministry of Skill Development, Entrepreneurship, to DGT, to NSDC. I think there is no difference in opinion when it comes to realizing the fact of how important apprenticeship is, not only as a skilling scheme but for the development and increasing the livelihood in this country. I was in a discussion yesterday also and have been in discussions throughout. So in fact, the talks have been on about increasing the budget year on year, because we are expecting the growth to be high. We've grown at 100% year on year. We're expecting it to be higher. Companies are slowly, more and more companies are coming on board. Apprentices, more and more companies are increasing the percentage of apprentices they had in their companies. So on the macro level, we don't absolutely, that's an absolute no, that we don't expect the budgets to be cut in anywhere.
Okay, superb. I think that kind of solves the first two queries that we had. The third one, I'd maybe go to Surajit sir. Surajit sir, there's a question that's come in which says, what was the rationale? And obviously, since you've kind of seen the scheme from the inception and how it's kind of progressed over the past few years, what was the rationale behind deploying these set of third-party aggregators, and what is the value that they bring into the table for companies who are willing to implement this within their setups? Maybe if you could share your thoughts there, and that will be helpful for, I think, some 2-3 questions around this specific point.
Yeah, third-party aggregators were brought in as service providers to help the industry to understand and manage the program on behalf of the industry. And we should not forget that a lot of industry in India is small scale. So there is MSMEs there who don't have HR or the wherewithal to actually handle this program, although it's very easy. So the third-party aggregators, from mobilizing the apprentices to helping them finalize the courses which they have to run, to actually bringing them on board on the portal, because the MSMEs need not engage staff for mobilizing, staff for IT, staff for accounting, and how to fill in the reimbursement applications. So all these things are done by the third-party aggregators at a cost which is to be settled between the industry and the third-party aggregators. The government is not getting into it. So that was the intent of bringing in the third-party aggregators. And we had done a study when I was in NSDC, where the third-party aggregators were incentivized by the government sometime in the second half of 2019-20, I think 1st October onwards. And The second half of that year saw an increase of 223%, if I remember right, of the contracts, because the industry found this service to be very, very useful. And going forward, when we are looking at panning out of maybe doubling the contracts every year, today we are at 4 or 5 lakhs, and we have doubled, at least the optional trades has more than doubled despite COVID. So when normal times return, we are looking at the small scale industry as the awareness spreads and the small scale industry understand return on investment, because money is very important for them. They are very sensitive to money. So we are looking at more and more apprentices in the small scale industry. And I think the more third party aggregators there will be in India, there would be more rollouts of apprenticeship. And when you are looking at a possible 15 million contracts at any given point of time, and we are at 5 or 6 lakhs, I think there cannot be sufficient number of TPAs to help the MSMEs at any given point of time to roll out these programs. So that was the context in where TPAs were brought in. And I think it is a very, very good initiative and it has worked well.
Thank you, Surajit sir. Yeah, Pramod boss.
There's one leading question on the same. Would TUCOMS help you with the payout reimbursement while the portal continues to be very smooth and we've discussed it right now? Our services are end-to-end, so we definitely do take care of ensuring that your payout comes. And in fact, some of our services are linked with we only charging you when your payout happens. So yes, I think that's one question that was there from the audience. I thought I'll choose to answer it. Karan, please go ahead. You think you have some more questions?
Yes, yes. So there's one question that again a couple of people have asked. Maybe Girish sir, you can answer this. What are the steps that skill councils and the government is actually taking to popularize apprentice job roles across the country? So I think on one hand we have a lot of scheme level changes and scheme level issues that we are kind of taking to different organizations. But for the trainees, I think Surajit sir touched upon this when he spoke about the NEP and the changes that have been brought about. So how can we make this scheme and adoption of apprentice job roles much more popular for the students who are actually coming in, the fresh graduates who are coming through to join in NAPS roles?
See, actually, the proof of putting in is in getting permanent jobs after apprenticeship by following these job roles. And that is what is the data, what we are popularizing, and we are communicating with the HR functions also, and also we are more communicating with the academia field as well. That these are the most, as Vasu was saying, that which are the most popular job roles that we were talking about. So the same data we are going and talking to the students as well. That and also we are telling them that these are the sectors, these are the locations and companies which are kind of hiring on these job roles and things like that. That is one part of it. And secondly, what we are also doing is that depending on the technological changes that are happening, we are with the industry's requirement, we are coming out with new job roles as well in all these new technologies. And I must say, and also recently with the Government of India, MeitY, we have launched a web portal called Future Skill Prime. And that is kind of free for all the Indian citizens, which in fact we had proposed to NSDC also, that it can be popularized across India for all industry sectors. Anybody who is above the age of 18, he or she can just log into that portal and they can learn about all these new technologies like IoT, machine learning, cloud computing, so on and so forth. All these 10 new technologies, basic learning, and that will add their skilling proficiency when they get onto a job, right? Suppose analytics, or if somebody is expert there, and it takes hardly any 10th pass, 12th pass people can understand the basics of all these things. So that way we are popularizing, and that is how we are making this effort to increase the efficacy of apprentices and also opportunities for apprentices with the companies, and connecting these two. That is the role what we are playing. Hope that answers the question.
Sure. Yes, sir. Sure it does.
There are some more questions I just wanted to read. I think I was going through one which is, can a registered TPA can a registered TPA also register as an establishment and hire candidates? I'm not sure who could take that up, but
it can for its own strength of employees, not for any other establishment.
Sure. Okay.
Suppose a TPA has 100 employees, it can engage between 2.5% and 15% as apprentices, but the establishment have to engage their own apprentices. TPA can help them mobilize, but not engage on their behalf.
Sure. There's one more question, which is reference to, is there a timeline till which you can have the individuals under a scheme? Is 6 months a max time period, or can it get extended? I think this is related to QPs. Also, maybe you could take it up, or Girish, if you could take it up.
Yeah, particularly duration of apprenticeship is defined in the curricula itself. When for training, if a particular curriculum, say for example, custard, CRM voice, if that is chosen, that period is already defined there. And it all depends whether the curricula can be shortened by period in terms of whether the candidate who's being hired is a graduate or a pursuing graduate or so, because for graduates, the basic training is exempted there. So these kind of exemptions are also there. If the basic training is exempted and only the on-the-job training of maybe then 3 months, if that is done, then the training is considered to be completed, and also compliance also is considered to be complied. So and also I think the question was whether it can be extended. Yeah. It can be extended only to the tune of maximum 15% only in some rare situations. But if a person is non-performing, or even some people were already asking this question that, our business process is needing them for much longer time, hence can we extend them? Obviously, that amounts to exploitation. Definitely, there is a no there. And so, however, if a person falls sick and because of that he goes on leave for longer duration and all, in such unusual situations, with the approval of Joint Apprenticeship Advisor, which is NASSCOM, can extend the duration. And this has happened more so, particularly we have got multiple examples on hand because of COVID. Whatever the disruption it has caused, there was discontinuity, and we had to extend, and we have done. And with NSDC support, it's all been done. So no issues there. But again, the principal philosophy is that this is an obligation that the industry is fulfilling towards the nation by skill building. At no point of time it should be exploitation. If you look at apprenticeship with this filter, things will be very, very clear.
I think very rightly answered. Once you look at things in the right perspective, you actually start getting your answers automatically.
And there is a footnote to what Girish said, that at a macro level, while designing, the industry has a decision to have an apprenticeship program between 6 months and 3 years. I mean, if it's a very complex job role, basically the engineering side and all, it can also be up to 3 years. But once the program is designed, then what Girish said kicks in, that not more than 15%, etc., etc. And basic training being exempted and all. But otherwise, the world is between 6 months and 3 years.
Sure. There's some questions on documentation required for apprentice. I think we will be sending out an email post this with details of how one can sort of, get onboarded on the same. I think that should answer the question. I'm not taking up those questions here in interest of time for the same. There's one more question, which is, I think, important. We must take that up. In case of apprentice does not achieve his or her target or has poor performance, can we do a termination or move out the apprentice at that point of time? I think that's an important question.
A standard process has to be followed. And as Vasu was saying in the beginning, that to treat apprentices also as saying on par with the regular employees. Any fresher who is hired as a permanent employee also, if he or she is not performing, an organization, established organization, HR will follow a typical process of giving feedback, allowing time for improvement, then giving notices. And if still the performance is not there, then definitely an answer to your question again is yes. The person who's not performing can be terminated. with following a proper process. And with that, with the approval of Joint Apprenticeship Advisor, which is NASSCOM for IT sector.
See, there is one more thing I wanted to add to the concept of obligation of the industry. See, here, I don't see this as an obligation. Apprenticeship actually is the need of the industry. So, when you see, you can say 2.5% could be a law where industry has been mandated to offer shop floor to apprentices for training. But then if you see it the other way around, if you don't offer your shop floor for an apprentice to come and train, from where will you get ready to employ workers? Or so it's not about obligation. It again, as I said, it is up to the industry. You do your 2.5%, at least offer the shop floor for people who you say they are not ready for employment. So obviously you'll offer the shop floor to make them ready for employment. Do that bit. After that, if you choose to continue to employ and train, then don't use up to 15%. But if you see merit in training and employing and cherry picking the best of them and actually reducing your HR cost of post-recruitment training, reduction in the cost of re-recruitment because attrition is going to go down, savings in terms of no ESI, EPF. So if you see the win-win of this entire thing, there is no question of obligation. I think the industry will soon start saying, why not 25%? And that's where the question of exploitation will come. So I think the industry and all of us should look at apprenticeship like that. It's a great opportunity. It is a need of the industry. The law just happens to be there. And as I said, it's a wish list of the industry. The law is not the typical law, ye nahi karna, wo nahi karna. It is saying, ye bhi kar lo, wo bhi kar lo. Kuch bhi kar lo. Literally, whatever you need, please come and do it.
Correct. I think there's one more question on PF and ESI. Can they pay in case the company wants to? Vasu, you want to take that up?
Yes. So, I mean, it's one of the very gray areas. So ESI actually is technically it's a contribution like which the state it's a state level jurisdiction. So what we say, so we are aware that some companies are giving. There's no clear answer towards whether it's right or wrong to do it or not. But I think the idea is to, so you'll be glad to know that this is one of the major recommendations that we have sent to the ministry to change and make apprentices eligible under EPF and ESI. Till such time you hear from us and this is formalized, if it happens to go ahead, what we usually suggest to the establishments is that they should take on a group insurance policy for all their apprentices. It doesn't cost much. And I think as a good practice, every company should, because every company is included, apprentice is covered under the Workmen's Compensation Act. So if anything goes wrong, if there is any injury or any issue, the employer establishment would be liable. So it's always a good practice to take group insurance. But as of now, as of today, companies are not eligible to pay them EPF and ESI.
See, I'll fine tune that. See, what is happening is that security and safety of a worker, of an apprentice, remains to be the obligation of the employer or establishment, even though an apprentice is not a worker. Now, as far as EPF is concerned, contributory EPF optionally is allowed by the EPF Act. So what we have said is a company, if it wants to take insurance, that is the best way of doing it. But if it wants to pay EPF, please pay EPF, but you can pay the EPF because it is allowed by the EPF establishment, voluntary EPF. But the deduction which you make on an app is, after making that deduction, the stipend which you are paying should not reduce. I mean, at least the minimum stipend has to be there in spite of the deduction. Yeah. That is one. As far as ESI is concerned, unfortunately, the ESI Act does not permit or recognize an app in the part of their scheme. So there is no way that anybody who was wanting to voluntarily so include apprentices under the ESI umbrella can do it. So the only way out is the health insurance. So what Vasu is saying is, as a recommendation, under the Apprenticeship Act amendments, there is this suggestion that the ESI be requested to make voluntary for apprentices to be a part of the ESI scheme, but that will not be a part of the Apprenticeship Act amendment. It will have to go to the, I think, to go to the labor code side and see how this can be done. So this is where it rests today.
I think we have covered most of the questions. There's one last question which is there on the table is, in case apprentice wants to leave the job, what will be the notice period he needs to serve? So is there a notice period for the apprentice to move out? Vasu, you'd like to take that?
Yeah, so the notice period is the company defined notice period that would be there. And yeah, so I mean, that's about it. They'll have to serve that. And the establishment would be liable to continue paying the stipend to the apprentice during the notice period.
So I think we've covered most of the questions. It's been a very fruitful and engaging session, I'm sure. Girish, yes, please come in.
Practically, how it happens is an apprentice, if he starts absconding, there is no way one can catch him or her, right? So notice period is all if everything starts happening smoothly in a formal way. But otherwise, you know, and that, as Vasu very rightly said, that has to be part of the contract itself, and it may differ from company to company. And I don't think practically from the business running perspective, I don't think if somebody at an apprentice level is wanting to leave and he or she would not be causing much of any effect as far as the business is concerned, it is all the more, I would say, advised the companies to let them go immediately or the next day itself, rather than allowing them to hang out for some other purpose, whatever that is. So, and that is also possible. Next day itself they can go, but it is left to the discretion of the organization as to what is the guidelines that they would want to follow as far as you know, relieving these apprentice candidates are concerned. And also, you know, an apprentice, if one wants to leave for a better opportunity, then our objective of killing a person and getting him or her a better job is already done. So, then what is the point in unnecessarily holding somebody? Nobody at that level, the way the opportunities come in, nobody would be wanting to stay for 1 month, 3 months, or that kind of stuff, with the period of apprenticeship itself being minimum 6 months. So look at it from a practical perspective, what it suits to the business, and based on that, companies can take a call.
Sure, good. Thanks a ton, Girish sir, for the same. I take the opportunity to thank Surijit sir, Girish sir, Vasu sir for the same. This was a very engaging session. Karan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Pramod Bose, for steering the discussion so well. I think we've got quite a few sessions, and since, you know, we've got Surijit sir, Girish and Vasu, I think this can kind of go on for the next 1 hour, I'm sure. I've got quite a few pings on my phone. I've been reading some questions from there. Maybe we'll kind of schedule one more and have, you know, all three of you and your collective wisdom together. Thank you so very much, Girish sir, Surijit sir, and Vasu. Always a pleasure. Thank you for, you know, confirming on such a short notice. Yeah, Surijit sir, maybe final closing comments from your end to everybody, including us, in terms of how we can move ahead. Your guidance always kind of.
Yeah, I would only urge the industry to look at it and take to it like fish takes to water. I mean, as I said, it's a secret which should not have been kept a secret, but it's a fantastic program for the industry to take on to. And as I suggested in the beginning, also get more industry to talk to industry on this. I think that's going to be the most effective messenger. Even I would request NSDC and SSCs also to adopt that strategy, that get industry now to talk to industry. In whatever webinars, seminars, roadshows we have, get industry now to talk to industry. I think that's what is going to make the difference.
Look forward to doing it, Suresh sir. I think we'll take that sure, and we'll work towards getting the industry together to probably have a session soon on the same, for sure.
Sure. Girish sir, your closing comments, please.
I fully echo what Surijit sir has said, that it is the best way of replenishing your workforce at the entry level. And I think every industry should follow that. And at the same time, it is the responsibility of the SSCs to ensure the quality of this training and quality of the skilling workforce. That I think, and that happens mostly through a continuous dialogue between the industry and the sectoral councils and also NSDC and so on and so forth, which always is as a continuous process. We will definitely do that. But at the same time, with the benefits that are already there, and as Surjit sir said, the law is kuch bhi kar lo types of law. I don't think why anybody would have an apprehension to adopt this. And while it is giving everywhere, it is win, win, win. Why not then? Why not win? Let's win. That's what my message would be.
Right, sir. Thank you. Thank you so very much, sir. Thanks for joining in. Vasu, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming in. Your closing comments, sir.
It's a no-brainer. It's a win-win for the establishment and the apprentice and the sector as a whole. So just go for it. Every company should go for it, and it should be an integral part of the HR hiring process for every company. It should be how you are recruiting your primary talent, nurturing them, and then getting them on board yeah. I mean, every company should adopt this in their mainstream hiring plan.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Vasu. Thanks, Pramod boss, again. On behalf of Team 2Comms, we wish you the very best. Stay indoors, stay safe. Till next time, we'll meet again soon. Thanks. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.